You're listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast, brought to you by Blue Trust.
Thank you guys for being here. I am so excited for you to share your story today. So will you start by just telling us a little bit about yourselves and a little bit about your family?
We're Jeff and Dianne Chinery, and we have been married for 31 years.
Awesome.
Jeff has been with Blue Trust for
27 years now, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, we moved to Atlanta 27 years ago then.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 8 children. Our oldest is 27, and she's married in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The next daughter, Ella Grace, is 25. She's lives with her husband in Huntsville, Alabama. Our son Ethan is 23. He lives in Colorado. Our son Noble is 20. Then David is 17. Evan is 16 and will be 17 in December.
Oh my
They're
goodness.
4 months apart.
Okay.
Lucy is 15 and May is 12.
And the older 4 are our biological children, and the younger 4, David, Evan, Lucy, are our adopted children.
Okay, and they are adopted from...
China.
So all 4 are adopted from China.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about why China?
Oh. So I told you if I sat close to you, this is
Great, I'm ready.
But it does start when I was in high school and learned about China's one-child policy and the infanticide and forced abortions that followed that decision by the Chinese government. And so I always thought, when I get married, we'll adopt from China. And got married, and we had 4 biological children, and thought, our quiver is full, and so I guess I won't be doing that. My heart was still there, but it was something I surrendered to the Lord, because we had talked about it, but at that time we just decided it wasn't for us. So
And we had no plans for a large family, so you think 8 children.
that's true.
And that's still a little shocking to even say out loud.
It is.
We had
It
8
is.
children.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
So we had our first, and then our second and third, and we got to Noble, the 4th, and we thought that's probably it. Our quiver is probably full. But Diane still had in her heart this burden for China and for the children.
And did you know about that?
Only to the degree we talked to generally, like many married couples do, about maybe we'd adopt one day. There's needs. We all knew that.
And he knew my
never
desire, but it was obvious that was not the direction of our family at that time.
Sure.
And we didn't have extensive conversation around that. And what she didn't share is she wanted the Lord to lead me. So she was willing to give it up and let Him work and see what happened through me versus her being the driver of that. And thus, we had our 4 children and have some dear friends who themselves adopted from China. So we got involved with an organization called Lifeline in Birmingham.
Can we tell that story?
Yeah.
Can I tell that story?
Oh,
real
you
quick?
should tell all stories. Go
This
ahead.
is because it is such a beautiful thing on how the Lord knows us. He knows our hearts and our desires, and His plan is just, in our family, is just so beautiful. So, as Jeff said, it's not that dream died, but I surrendered it. And one of my best friends, one day we're together, and she goes, "We're going to adopt from China." And I was like, "You are kidding me." And I don't know that I'd ever shared with her the long time ago dream that had so they adopted from China. We were the child's godparents. And if am I remembering that correctly? Yes. So then they get another call, and there was a little boy available, and they went back to China. Well, adoption's always a busy, bumpy process. So her husband, it got pushed, and her husband could not go with her. And Jeff says, "Why don't you go with Mary Grace and help her? See if she needs extra hands there." So our second oldest daughter, Ella Grace, and I flew to China for a week in Guangzhou as my friend Mary Grace. She completed their adoption because her husband could not be there. And I just thought that was just the sweetest thing of the Lord to do, to get me to be able to do that. Well, while I was there in Guangzhou, it used to be that all the families that are adopting meet there. Like that's your last stop before you leave, right? Everything's finalized there. And so there used to be 20 families staying from all different places in this hotel.
Wow.
And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, because most of the children adopted from China at first were girls. That wait list became extremely long, and then kids adopted from China were mostly special needs of varying severity. So, and there was a family there that they adopted an older girl. I think she was 12, and she had a debilitating disease. They didn't have a wheelchair yet, and so her dad carried her everywhere, put her on the van, and and it was just, like I said, one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever seen in my life. So I came home and told Jeff, I said, this is amazing. This agency, Lifeline, is doing amazing things, putting families together. And he was like, absolutely, that's a great way for us to get involved. And then we saw, long story short, we saw a picture of Evan. And I still didn't say anything, but I was just like, oh, he is so precious. Still thinking for sure, because support is a huge role in the adoption world. There are families that sell cars, that do fundraisers to be able to adopt.
Do everything to...
It is huge. So we thought we were one of those supporters. And so we see Evan, and I didn't really say anything, but it's so cute.
Because this friend, Mary Grace, dear friend, is sending us these photographs and pictures, because it doesn't work this way anymore, or it's not the same process, but these agencies would send out files and say, here are some children we have their files if you're interested in adopting from India or China or wherever, and you see these pictures and a little bit of a profile. So
and it was
Mary Grace was
and so on the page that Evan was on Lifeline's website, again, this has changed, they would have the files of about 5 children for about 3 months, and then they would move on to the next or whatever. And so apparently Jeff went on the Lifeline website.
Mary Grace was copying me on some of the emails.
and saw Evan. And I woke up the next morning the way I remember it, and Jeff was like, did you see that little girl Lila? And I was like, no, that was Lucy. She was one of the 5 too. And actually, so from there...
So at that point, we had to look at each other and say, maybe this is God calling us to do this. And we agreed together he was, and it wasn't a long conversation. We just felt he'd given us that burden.
That's why he does things with us. He has to.
So within 24 hours or so, we're actually driving in the car. Vividly remember this. We call the person we had gotten to know at Lifeline, who served this other family that we're dear friends with, who would be our social worker and our connection. And we said, hi, Amy, this is Jeff and Dianne. We want to adopt, and we want to adopt 2 children. We know who they are. So
So what do we do? Because we don't know how to adopt kids.
How do we start? Well, and what's interesting about the process, at least as it works with China, is you go through being qualified to adopt, and then once everything is done, then you're matched with a child.
Okay.
So there's no guarantee that now Evan and Lucy, who were in their foster homes, had different names, would be the children we'd be able to adopt. But we felt like that's who the Lord had for us, and we were going to...
these kids. So what do we do? And we did not really even know their special needs at the time.
And so Amy says, well, we don't really do that anymore, adopting 2 at the same time. We've found to be a challenge. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to go through some extra steps, because we want to make sure, because Lifeline is so committed to make sure there's health in the family, that this is the right fit, and all those things. And we said, great. Then we'll trust the Lord with the process. We're signing up for that, and we'll see what happens. And we I think once or twice briefly had to say, what if they only say 1? What do we do? But that never came up.
Yeah.
So they took us through the process and said, you can adopt Evan and Lucy, and we were full steam ahead.
So here's the other thing now.
Okay.
I told you there were 5 kids on that list. There was a third boy on there that really grabbed our attention.
And our older daughter's attention, Claire.
And very particular. I mean, so when we started praying for him that he would find a family, and they called him Track on the profile because they just give them names. So Evan was Jonah, Lucy was Lila, and David was Track. Because so when we went to adopt Lucy and Evan, pick them up, David lived in a nearby apartment. Because David and Evan were in the same foster family system, where they had, and this is one of the things I'm really encouraged about when I think about China closing adoptions, because there are people who it is their calling and their mission to love the children with the love of Christ in particular. And so this agency, what they would do, I mean, it wasn't an agency, organization called Little Flower, and what they would do was they would rent apartments, a cluster of apartments. They'd hire parents, house parents, and they would have 3-4 children living in that home scenario, and they provide their medical needs. They're living in a family situation. It was just so healthy. So David lived in an apartment nearby, and Claire asked, "Can we please see Track?" And so it's hard not to cry, isn't it? But
it's okay. We'll take
David
all emotion.
comes over.
Okay.
We're,
I don't
we're meeting
remember
Lucy
this
and
part.
Evan.
Okay.
Well, we don't often get we've got a lot of stories.
I know.
I mean, it's amazing
Okay,
what God
I'm
does.
all in.
What
Go
he makes
ahead.
a way. So when so David came over and we got to meet him. We've got pictures of him with us, and we left with Lucy and Evan.
And we gave him a sucker. Remember that? And,
Yeah,
and he can't speak
but-
English, and obviously
Didn't understand any English. Oh yeah, none of them understood English when
it's
we
just
adopted them.
simple social interaction. We have a picture, but we think we're probably never going to see him again.
Yeah.
But we're going to pray for him.
yeah,
And I remember
absolutely.
reassuring Claire in particular that we are going to pray for his parents. And we did. We started praying. And we brought Lucy and Evan home. We got home March 19th. And I kept up with it through Little Flower how David was Track. Was doing. Xing Long was his Chinese name.
Wow.
How he was doing. And she said, well, actually, he got a grant. A child had to drop out. There's another agency that gives surgery, facial cranial surgery, to children from all around the world. And every year they have 5. Am I right?
4 or 5. They will bring here cases that they travel around the world to do these surgeries, but there's cases that are just more complex, and they would need to need to do it here for recovery and all that. So they bring those children here.
And this woman that from Little Flower got David a position, and she said, actually, he's coming to America. And I was like, can he come? Can we go? He come here? Can the surgery be here? And she said, no, it's actually located in Dallas.
Okay.
And I said, well, can we go see him? Can we? Because he and Evan were friends, right? And can we? Could he visit us? Maybe. She goes, he's got a 6 weeks visa, so maybe, but it's going to be like a 2-3 week recovery. So this was in February. So Lucy and Evan had not even been home a year. And I got a call, and she said it was a week after his surgery. And we had kept up with his surgery and things like that. And there was an elder for our church that was even visiting in Dallas who went by to pray with him before his surgery. Because it was a very major surgery.
Yeah, he was on a business trip, but he took the time to go pray with David.
That's
Who
incredible.
couldn't speak English and who still didn't, but was loved very well by several families there and by this event.
So we went, and so Serena calls and says, he's ready to go. It was a week after, and knowing David now, totally not surprised. Totally not surprised. So we flew to Dallas. I took Lucy and Evan and flew to Dallas and brought him back to Atlanta. And we're going to advocate and pray because we want him near us and all those things. So we kept praying for his parents and things like that.
So he's just staying with us while he recovers from surgery. There was a follow-up that had to happen. So the Chinese government actually let him stay.
Yeah. So it's just such a miracle thing. is that at that time, the Chinese government started calling all children back to their original orphanages, which means they could not stay in those foster homes anymore. And that's a terrible situation for the children. So David's here, and we were like, Serena, can we get his visa extended? Because we thought if we can, if God reveals his family while he's here, that would be so much better. He would know they're coming for him and all this stuff. And meanwhile, again, he's just in our home. It's so fantastic. So she calls and she says, if you can take him back to Dallas there's a little tweak surgery they need to do, they'll extend his medical visa. And I said, oh, yes, we'll be glad to do that. And he did need it. I mean, it was a little pull or whatever. But she got him a year extension. And that's when God said, surprise, you're his parents. Surprise. You're the ones you've been praying for.
You've been praying for yourselves.
We have been.
Oh, my goodness.
So we started the process immediately. And he stayed with us. So he got home less than a year after Lucy and Evan did, which is so miraculous. It is just so miraculous.
So as this was happening, it feels like a whirlwind, even for you to tell the story. Were you ever afraid? Were you just excited and you were on to the next thing?
Adoption can be very daunting, and there's a lot of circumstances that come into play for different families, different circumstances and children. But I think I can say for us, in each of our adoptions, both with prep and all the work and the travel, that's one of the things God granted us a peace about the circumstances, meaning if we think enough about it, there are things that would cause us to be
that's what I was going to say, too, is how I said it's just like boom, boom, boom. That's how God does it for us. Usually that is. And so we were just walking. It feels like, and it's felt like this through each of us, we've just been carried along. And I think the other thing that God did was equipped us. He not only knows us, but because he made us, he equipped us. Jeff is amazing because the paperwork is horrendous. I mean, it is volumes. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of just manual labor, filling out forms. Jeff is that kind of person that just looks down, gets it done, and I am the dreamer. Would you say that's absolutely, just kind of that getting our hearts ready, that kind of thing. So scary in a way, but being carried along when you realize, and some things you look back and you're like, that's nuts. And when you see God is sovereign through all things, the good and the bad, absolutely. But when you hear stories, we can't believe it's our story, because when you see how he worked things out, because David had been with us a year, you're not supposed to start adoption again from China until the child has been home a year.
Okay.
Jeff is in China with Evan finishing their adoption. I didn't go for that trip because I was at home, and he had been home. He was going on a trip to China. He's coming back home, so I didn't go.
Yeah, David got to stay with us for the entire adoption process, but he was still a Chinese citizen.
Okay.
So he had to return to China as a Chinese citizen and then travel back here as an adopted child with an immigration visa. So when it was time, when everything was approved, Evan, David, and I traveled to China and then ultimately traveled back home because we had to go through the same steps. But the neat thing was, he knew his parents. He was his dad at that point, and he had been with us for a year.
We'd already done the hard things.
Yeah.
That first year of adjustment. But so while Jeff is in China with the boys, we're talking on the phone one night.
Oh my.
We're texting. No, we're texting.
Are we texting?
Yes.
Okay. And?
We're texting. Yeah, it's very vivid. We've had zero conversation, much like with even our biological children. We weren't talking a whole lot about how many or what's coming next or whatever. Yeah. We were just finishing this process and having had a fairly intense year of getting ready to adopt David and me being in China. We were just doing the next thing. Well, I get a text from Dianne that essentially says, I know who number 4 is going to be, or something to that effect. I know who we're going to adopt next, and here's a picture. And so my response was, can we wait till I get home to talk about this? So
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
So I believe, I can't recall that you had even shared a picture. So Dianne was like, of course, and got back home, and we both felt clearly that he had a fourth child for us.
Yeah.
And her name was May, her Chinese name is May, and we started her adoption process shortly after returning.
But here's the, again, really crazy part. They let us start the adoption process. Because remember, you're supposed to be home a year with the child after the adoption before you start another.
Right.
The Chinese government said they would count that year that he was with us. And so we were able to start immediately. And that is how we were able to bring May home. Because if we had been, and our hearts break for families who were behind us. We had travel approval to go get May, and that is the only reason that we were allowed to go get her. Because the Chinese government said, okay, we'll let the people with travel approval come. And then supposedly they said, and then we'll see what happens. Well, what happened was they shut off Chinese adoptions. And even people that were at that next step, they'd been matched with a child, they had been waiting for travel approval, they did not get to go.
So backing up a little bit, we were able to pursue May and her adoption, and that process was about 18 months or so from start to getting ready to get on an airplane. So in January of 2020, we have our tickets bought, we have all the clothes bought, we're ready to go, we're ready to get on an airplane, and something's happening around the world, this thing called COVID. And we actually, and I was reviewing some emails the other day with our email correspondence we had with our pediatrician at the time.
Oh, yes.
We're talking about this thing happening, and should we be concerned or worried? And this is in the days when it was, oh, we should do this or that. It's not a big deal. Worry about it. Don't worry about it. So we're literally having these kinds of conversations. And then 4 days before we're to get on the plane, the world just shuts down. China shuts down. And basically the whole world shuts down. And then for the next 3 years, it's just quiet crickets, meaning China hasn't opened back up. The world begins to open back up. Different countries do different things. But in terms of adoption, even after China allows some tourism travel and other things like that, it's just crickets on the adoption front.
So you're ready to go. You have everything ready. And suddenly, that's it. You can't go. It's a hard stop. And I can remember working on your team, standing in your office door, like we were all praying. You know, our whole Blue Trust family was all praying for this next trip, and then saying, well, that's it, and you can't go. So how did you feel?
Well, we thought it was short term. Right?
Okay.
Because as things go on, I think that's the way
COVID was going to spike up and down, right?
Okay,
There's just
right,
quick,
you're
we
right.
just need to wait on it.
2 months, things like that. So we kept everything packed. We just froze everything.
Okay.
And we kept, her clothes and all those things. And a year goes by, and 2 years go by, and at 3 years we realized we may not go. And
we actually pivoted our prayers for her, and for people who would ask, how can we pray? We're still hopeful of being able to go get her, but our prayer was, Lord, please give her gospel hope wherever she is and whatever her circumstance is, because we were trusting in the Lord, but practically the idea of being able to travel just didn't look like it was going to happen. China was sharing nothing and hadn't opened up adoptions. And then at the beginning,
and politics between the United States and China were getting worse, so that's always a...
So at the beginning of so you have this process you go through to get ready to adopt, and the last step is travel approval. That means everything is green lighted. Both countries have said yes, and you can go. So there's a handful of families that had travel approval like us, who either were getting on an airplane or were about to get on an airplane and had to be put on hold. So at the beginning of 2023, China began reaching out to some of those families and said, okay, you can come get your child. You can come get your child. You can come get your child. So we didn't hear anything for most of the year in spite of doing some reaching out. China was very quiet. So we, again, getting toward the end of 2023, we're thinking this isn't going to happen.
Well, don't forget about this little loop. I got a cancer diagnosis.
Let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So in March of 2023, breast cancer diagnosis, and thankfully we've navigated through that. Diane's been a trooper through that, and we're on the other side of that. And obviously trust the Lord with that, but that creates a wrinkle because China doesn't let you start the adoption process, or what used to be the adoption process, if you've had cancer within the last 3 years. So we've journeyed through that in the spring of 23. We get to October, haven't heard anything, thinking we're probably not going to be able to travel. China reaches out with some questions, and
that's not usual in the process. So they send a questionnaire to see if, I remember the wording exactly, to see if they would invite us to come get our child. So we have to fill out the questionnaire. It's a health questionnaire. It's a financial questionnaire. And so I have to, of course, put down my breast cancer diagnosis.
And May's file was with a particular agency. Every adopted child is, when you do these international adoptions, you work with an agency. Think of a nonprofit ministry that focuses on adoption with obviously special qualifications. And their China program had basically shut down, but they were still the conduit, and they facilitated this questionnaire exchange and let us know they felt like this wasn't going to happen, because as soon as we responded and said Dianne's had cancer, they would probably say no. And that we heard that repeatedly. Probably not going to happen, and that was our expectation. And as well, they did say, however,
and this is not life. This, I do feel like when you say this, we were not at that time with Lifeline. We had, through a weird series of events, we ended up with another agency that we were working with. They laid off their China person, who was our contact person, who was whatever, because of COVID, they totally laid that person off. So we hear from this agency, like, they want you to fill out this questionnaire and bring up my breast cancer. And they're like, yeah, that's probably going to be a deal killer.
You're not going to be able to travel. However, if there's any even remote possibility, your home study's outdated because you have new adult children in the home, children have left the home, so you need to get a new home study. We've laid off our China staff. We don't have a social worker in Georgia anymore for any adoptions, and so you're going to have to do this on your own. And so for anybody who's been through the adoption process, you appreciate your agency is your lifeline. And they guide you through the whole process. They have social workers, and anybody who's done foster care or domestic adoption is familiar with this process, or familiar with the whole idea of a home study and all that. Pretty in-depth process. Well, they said, you need to get a new home study, and we can't help. So immediately we called Lifeline, who we'd adopted Evan and Lucy through, and said, who we'd continued to support and maintain relationships with, and who had cheerleaded us all along, who would check in with us through this COVID.
Like when they heard about my cancer diagnosis, contacted us, and the team's praying for you.
And praying for our adoption of May, even though she's not part of in their system, we're not working through them at all. So we call them and say, help. We start the home study process, and we're basically starting from scratch because it's very dated. A lot of changes have happened, and we have to go through the whole process. And we won't even get into all of the details of that.
But we weren't feeling urgent, to be honest, because we were being told this isn't going to happen. So as we worked through the home study process, we were like, okay, so we send in that survey in October, and nothing.
No information, no thank you, no anything. So on December the 20th, a few days before Christmas, the agency that has May's file reaches out and says, China says, you can come get her, you have to be here in 2 weeks. This is December 20th, you'll be here in January 8th. The home study is not complete. We have no immigration paperwork. We certainly have no visas in our passports. We have no plane ticket. We have nothing. Be here in 2 weeks.
Normally, what they needed to happen in 2 weeks would happen in what span of time?
Like 6 months?
6 months would be the normal for most of those things. The adoption process from start to finish is a year to 18 months in most cases. But just to...
This would be about 6 months.
Get all the paperwork, 6 months.
Okay, that you needed to have done in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And so us being naive, we said...
Well, we didn't know. It's so funny. Hindsight is so interesting because you say, oh, it was COVID. And now we know what that was like, right? Mm-hmm. So... and a lot of times we think, oh, it'll be this long, but we don't know. And but the Lord knows. The Lord knows. So they're saying you've got to be here in 2 weeks. We have no idea that China is shutting down adoptions. They are closing offices already, which they would not allow any updates. And we're thinking that may be why. We didn't see that until we got to China. So we're thinking, wow.
Yeah, okay. So we said, we need till March or April, thinking this is a conversation or exchange, kind of a...
thinking it was a conversation.
We can go back and forth.
Yeah. So they responded after a few days and said, January 29th is the drop dead date. You're in her province on January 29th to get her. and this is just after Christmas as we have this back and forth, or the adoption's terminated. And we were able to confirm that was absolutely true. This was not a negotiation. And we're dealing with a country that obviously has a very different political system and all that, and we live in a Western world where we think, well, we can always figure something out. This was not negotiable. We were there on the 29th in her province, or we weren't going to be able to adopt her, and that was it.
But you ask if it was a scary thing.
Yes.
Yes. And as you're walking along, it's like, oh, okay, this is what's next. We see the process, and we're working together. Like I said, Jeff and I have very different personalities and different just propensities, things like that. They say you be there by January 8th. And we realized it felt like a gun to our heads, right? Because so much had changed while we had been waiting. And during that time, eventually, like Jeff said, we had started praying more prayers like gospel hope for her.
Right.
We'd kind of put that on a shelf. 2 of our daughters had met and married their husbands in this 5 years. A son had moved out to Colorado.
Moved out of state.
Noble had become an adult, graduated high school. Lucy, Evan, and David, who she was going to come to when they had been home 1 and 2 years.
Sure.
And they were like little children.
Right.
Were now doing high school stuff. So much had changed. So it felt very odd and a lot of pressure. Well, something we discovered was that and we've seen this a couple of times in our marriage, when there's a lot of pressure, I'm like, ooh, what is that? And I push in like, okay, well, let's do this. And just like, we need to look at this. We need to see what's going on. And so we reacted differently to that. I took a step forward, he took a step back. And all of a sudden you see that stress, that tension there.
Yeah.
And the Lord was so gracious in helping us work through that, because we were both heartbroken that that we didn't know exactly when they said, you have to be here by January 8th, or or that's when you need to be here before we ask for the extension. And the Lord was so gracious to us. So the miracles that he did to bring these children home were not only external, which everybody can see, but some of the biggest ones were internal. How he got us on absolutely in the right time, the exact same page. And it was actually, instead of detrimental to our marriage, I think it was beneficial. We knew each other better. The love and respect that we had for each other, that we could be heartbroken differently without blaming. It was just really, really good. So at that time, we also said we can take this next step together. So here's what we'll say. We can be there by March or April. And they said, no, January 29th. He said, okay, so what's the next thing we need to do?
And so the language we literally agreed upon is we're going to take the next faithful step. We prayed, we processed, we talked to friends praying for us as we figured out emotionally, are we in the same place? Because this is a lot to consider, because as Dianne said, life had changed so much. We have these adult children living in different states, and so are we really being called to this? But we together believed we were, and so we said, Lord, we're going to take the next faithful step. We have no idea what that means, and this looks impossible, because the USCIS, United States Customs and Immigration Service, post-COVID only operated via mail. Before COVID, you could call them, you could email them, you could find out what's going on with your case and your paperwork and all that. Well, they just began to operate via postal mail, so you would send something, and then you would have to wait to get a response to know they received it in the mail, and if you had to send something else, you would send it via mail. And obviously mail takes a little more time than an email or a phone call or whatever. So that's just
3
one.
weeks.
We have 3.
We don't even have 3 weeks,
Yeah.
did we?
So the home study's not even updated. We have all these things to do. And so we just put one foot in front of the other, knowing that it would not be humanly possible for us to be able to do this, because not only were we going to have to work really hard, which was our part, but there were governmental agencies who were going to have to waive their agree to different processes, like calling the IRS and saying, hey, can I have until May 15th because I'm not quite ready, or please help me with this or whatever.
Right.
So obviously people in these organizations are well-meaning, but they have a lot of bureaucracy and processes, some of it good, some of it a challenge. And so we just had to trust that these things were going to happen. And we reached out to people. Lifeline, it's Lifeline Children's Services in Birmingham, Alabama, in case anybody's ever wondering.
Great.
What agency or organization we're talking about. They were an amazing resource. And they, essentially, the agency we were with that had May's file, even once we were starting to push through these things, they just weren't able to be a resource. Lifeline stepped in, stood in the gap, and said, "We will be there with you. We will go through this together." They knew it was a very daunting task, but they knew that if the Lord was going to accomplish something, that He would do that. And so they were cheerleading us on. They were giving us contacts at the State Department. Call this person. The CEO of the organization was in D.C., lobbying on behalf of the ministry and contacting us saying, "What can I do? How can I help?" They did it. They put all of their resource into it, and we were able to push through over the course of several weeks, getting all of these things done. And I remember very vividly that the two big things we needed were her immigration paperwork. So for her to come here, she has to have permission from the U.S. government to travel on with an immigration visa. So that was the big piece. The other piece was we had to have visas in our passport so we could travel to China. So we work with the USCIS. We're overnighting paperwork, and we could go down a lot of different rabbit trails. We sent 6 priority overnight packages, 8 a.m. delivery in the course of sending all of this paperwork everywhere to get things done. Only 5 of them actually arrived on time. There was a snowstorm in the Midwest. Things got delayed. So literally we're tracking packages and going through all of these, jumping through all these hoops to make things happen. But the Lord continued to allow the next thing to happen. Finally, when all the immigration paperwork we had to have these 2 forms for this process. The immigration officer emailed us, and the text of his email was, he had attached the 2 forms, a PDF form, which was what we desperately needed. He said, "We don't do this." That was his email. That was all he said. He didn't say anything else. I replied to him, "Thank you," even when we got back to all the people who supported us, who lobbied for us, who worked behind the scenes, who did amazing things. We sent pictures of our family to say thank you. You were part of this story, and even emailed that officer that, and no response. So not sure if he was a robot or his AI or whatever. But,
Angel.
Yeah. But we don't do this, and yet they did it. And had they not done that, obviously we would not have been
Things were
able to
down
go.
to, as you know, days and hours. Like we would have a day to do something. So we got one of the forms, I remember, it was about Noble. He had to have fingerprints. And that process that usually happens, you get the paperwork, they'll tell you go on this date. So they sent this paperwork, and the date was after, it was in February.
After we were supposed to already be back.
We were supposed to be back.
Right.
We're supposed to leave, whatever. And somebody said, go down to the office. And we knew where the office was.
Lifeline. So Lifeline says, here's what you need to do.
That,
you just go
down
do this.
there. So we went, and I walked in with Noble, and she goes, we are not taking any walk-ins. We've been so packed. And another woman comes up. She said, look, and the lobby was empty. And she goes, what? And the lady said, God must have sent you right today. And
you thought,
yeah, you're like, you wouldn't believe it, sister. Right. It was like, but, and Noble went in, got his fingerprints, and that part was done. And it was just, so tell me about the packages again. You said we got 5, only 5 got there. How many did you send?
No, only 1 got, so.
Because you said a second ago, you said we sent 6 and only 5 got there.
Oh, we sent 6.
It was the opposite.
Only one arrived on time.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Meaning they were all next day, 8 a.m. delivery, going to different places. The courier in D.C. that was helping us with our visas and our passports, the USCIS office in Kansas City, and these things are getting overnighted. So you think, 8 a.m. delivery,
guaranteed.
Yeah, guaranteed. You can expect that.
When you absolutely positively need it there overnight.
And there were some weather issues in the middle of all this, which created some of the challenge. But we'd send a package, and we obviously we're telling this story and we got to travel, so we'll get there in just a second. But we get on the plane to travel, ultimately, and we see a UPS plane, and both of us had some measure of PTSD in that. Because we had been, and you'll learn more about that in just a minute. There's so many of these we sent, but it happened. They all ultimately
at the 11th hour. So tell the story. Our plane is leaving.
Okay.
So we have
bought tickets. We have our tickets.
Yes.
We're planning on, Lord willing, getting on that plane.
Right.
So January 26th is the day we leave. We have a noon flight, and we've got to be on that plane. There's no other flight we can take.
That's the latest we could have
get to her province on the 29th because of the time change, and we have to get into China and then travel once we're in China to get to her province. So noon on Friday the 26th is our drop dead. Well, the process for getting visas in your passports is about 4 or 5 days. You send them to the consulate, the Chinese consulate, and we had a courier assisting us with that. And they go through the process, and you get it back a week later. And I was just looking at this earlier today. We were shipping those off or starting that process on the 11th of January, but delay after delay. They wanted more stuff. We got our stuff up there to the Chinese consulate. They wanted to see our other adopted kids' old Chinese passports, so we're going back and forth and back and forth. Finally, we said through the agency to China, you're telling us we have to be there on the 29th. If you don't give us these visas and the passports vis-a-vis your consulate, we can't get on the airplane. So ultimately, they finished that process. So on Wednesday, the 24th, our courier in DC says, I've got your passports. Sends us a picture. Here are your passports with the visas. I'm putting them in the overnight pack. 8 a.m. delivery Thursday morning for us to receive them at our home on Thursday morning. So we have all the time in the world. We're going to get them Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. We don't leave until noon on Friday.
Yeah.
So these are the passports for us and for Evan and Lucy who are going to be traveling with us. So I'm having my quiet time Thursday morning, 8 o'clock, no UPS truck. It's okay because we're not leaving until tomorrow. And 8 a.m. delivery, 8:30, it'll get there eventually. 9 o'clock, nothing. And around 10, mid-morning or so, Dianne comes in and says, maybe we should look at the UPS site just to see where the package is. So we log in to the UPS site like we all do when we're trying to track a package, and nothing. There's no package. There's nothing in the system. We have the tracking number and there's nothing. So we call UPS. And UPS says, the customer service person says, the package hasn't been scanned. It doesn't exist. It's not anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So we call our courier and say they don't have it. And she said, well, I dropped it off at this particular store, this UPS store up in DC. So called the UPS store and they don't have it. Ended up speaking with them several times over the course of the morning. They turned the store upside down. They were very helpful and concerned, but they said, we don't have any package because we're thinking it got dropped, it's behind the counter or something. We have no packages here. So in talking to that store, they said, well, sometimes when these express overnights come in, we just throw them in the bin and then they get scanned where they're going, meaning when they arrive. And he said, and at the airport, they do that a lot too, where they just see the package, it's going to wherever, and they just throw it in the bin and it'll get scanned in the arrival city. He said, I'm just saying that's what happens. I'm not saying that's what we're supposed to do. It's not in the system. The UPS people are very helpful, 1-800-UPS, wherever they may be, but they just say, sorry, we can't help you. The package doesn't exist. So we're done. We've pushed for 30 days. The Lord has come before us. The State Department is involved. Our senator's office is involved. UCIS doing what they're doing. I mean, all the things that had to happen. Lifeline.
And how many people praying?
Yeah, people.
Yes.
Because we were keeping all of this on our group. Yes. Okay, pray. This is what's going on now.
I know. So, we were waiting for updates eagerly to see what to pray for next.
So it's a little surreal. It was a very surreal Thursday morning because the package is just gone and there's nothing anybody can do about it because there's nothing to do. And that's our passports, that's our visas. And as you just can't go get another one.
So did you feel resigned? Did you feel frustrated? Did you feel like you just wanted to punch everything?
We were willing to do anything.
Oh,
but there was,
good.
No, it
good.
was really, when I said we felt carried along?
Yes.
Like, okay, what's next?
Okay.
What is this next thing?
Okay.
but we all of a
What
sudden,
did you, but we may have had very different emotions. What did you?
yeah, what's the next thing? But we were out of next thing. We were out of another
Yes.
person to call,
Sure.
another resource, because at this point, the package doesn't exist. So there was.
But especially when they call and say they did find the package.
Well, but before the package, when it ultimately shows up, there's nothing anybody can do. We can't call if somebody could have gotten the president involved, he can do nothing because the package is invisible. It doesn't exist because it's nowhere. And then at 2:00 in the afternoon on that Thursday, and I don't know how many hundreds of people or people were checking the UPS website who all had the tracking number. Everybody's looking for it. Our courier in DC and us and our kids and friends were all logging into the UPS website, probably crashing the system. It shows up in New Jersey at 2:00 in the afternoon. So we leave tomorrow, the next day at noon. It's in New Jersey at 2:00. So good news, it's found.
Yeah.
True.
But the problem is, it's in a giant UPS facility with probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of other packages.
In the opposite direction in which we live.
And there's, no way you just can't go get it. And when you talk to the UPS people, they live in different places, meaning they're at different call centers. And so nobody can just go to the warehouse and necessarily get it. And especially for just a regular package. I mean, we're not important people, so we want our money back, or we want to get the package. There's just no leverage. So can we fly to New Jersey? Can we do this? We're looking at everything, and essentially we hit another dead end. So our dear friends, who Dianne had traveled with Mary Grace to China to adopt, have a son who had some connections at UPS who were higher up, and through their influence, they were able to go into this facility, have people go into the facility, because mind you, these people are not actually in that city, in New Jersey, find the package, triple wrap it in whatever priority tape they could to make sure that it was going to be on an airplane to come to Atlanta. So we have the package. It's supposed to arrive at 8:00 on Friday morning. So our flight's at noon. It's an international flight, so you've got to get there a little bit early. So
2 hours, a little bit.
Noble, our son, took Dianne, Evan, and Lucy to the airport so they could stand. We were flying Korean Air on the way over, so they could stand at the counter and wait on me to show up with the passports. And I had a dear friend take me to the UPS facility, and we waited on the package. And around, as I recall, 9:00 or so, finally,
that's what I remember.
Okay.
we got the passports.
9 o'clock.
And these ladies, and it's just another part of the story, and there's so many details we didn't get into. We had been overnighting these packages back and forth, and if you go to a UPS facility, not a UPS store, but an actual hub, they have like a customer service office. So I was on a first name basis with these ladies who had come in early that morning because they knew our story.
Yes.
Because the first time we go in, we're just another customer. The second time, hey, I saw you yesterday. The third time, what's going on? Tell me more. And so explain what's going on, and we need this package. And so they opened up the storefront early, knowing we were going to show up. We needed these passports.
invested.
They were invested.
Right.
Yes, these ladies, and they're cheering us on. And the package showed up. We drive to the airport. Drive to the airport, dash in with the passports, and we had like an hour to spare. So all the margin in the world.
And we were with May less than 48 hours later, right?
Left on Friday. Well, depending on time.
Well, yeah.
48, 72 hours.
Oh, yeah. Well,
a few days later, we're with.
Yeah, just
With
a
May.
couple of days. That was so surreal.
So before we get into what it was like to meet May,
Yes.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, one thought, as you shared about, you found out there might be a chance you could get May, and you started to follow that, but maybe you had some different heart feelings about that. It makes me think about how a lot of times in marriage, how we compliment each other. Lots of times spouses do, which is so wonderful, but sometimes so challenging, and that we react different ways. But usually both of us are trying to protect the marriage by reacting different ways. Like we're for each other, we just react different ways. And I love that you shared that piece, because I think we could hear this story and think, you all are like super Christians.
Yeah.
And God just made this way, and it was so incredible and without challenges, and you didn't have any kind of disagreements between the two of you. And so I love that you shared that part, because it makes you human. And so you chose then to keep taking the next step, not only in the adoption process, but toward each other, and had the respect for each other and worked through the tension, which is sometimes so hard to do. And so I really love that piece. Also, were there scriptures that stood out to you during that time, just during this process, that you were waiting and it looked like it was going to happen and then it wasn't going to happen? Were there certain scriptures that the Lord brought to both of you just to hold you during that time?
I would say yes, but this is what was, I think, more pronounced for me, is the scriptures, what they are saying about God. Meaning not just one particular scripture, but what the scriptures say about, again, his sovereignty, that he rules the nations. The earth, the earth is the Lord's.
Right.
And everyone in it is his. And he guides he guides kings and leaders like water in his hands, And so I think it's just, there were several, but
just the theme
that
of God's
idea,
sovereignty.
yes, that is absolutely what he says about himself in the scriptures.
Right.
And would you agree with that?
I think that's we're super nothing for sure. Well, if there is any super, it's over here. It's here. It's not here for sure. But I think in us working together on the same page, we were going through the process. Certainly me, of really it's about trusting the Lord, and that's where we both were. We have said we were in different places, but we were aligned, because we knew this was a God question. This wasn't, is Dianne right or wrong, or us, I'm going to win or she's going to win. We were committed to, what does the Lord want? And that was our real burden. But the mind of a man plans his way, the Lord directs his steps, as Proverbs tells us. But I think for us, that was the key, and probably if we could learn this lesson, it would be very helpful, especially when you think about marriage conflict. If our focus is on him and what he's doing and what his intention is, then that changes the dynamic. It's not a conflict between us. It was a wrestling with him.
And
what
there's nobody to blame.
Right.
Right.
There's nobody really to blame. And another thing having to do with the scriptures is when Lifeline takes you through this adoption process, a lot of it, they do an excellent job, superior to any other than of where you choose scripture. They're saying when it gets hard, because remember, this is just we're getting to the starting line of bringing my home, right?
Right.
We're now running that race. This is the real race. We were just getting registered for the race and the gun going off.
So in one of our updates, and you might remember this, Bethany, because I was just reading this earlier today, it felt like we were running a race to get to the start of the marathon. So imagine you've got a 10K that you got to run to make it to the start line of the marathon. But God for sure things.
Yeah, and so those things are hard. And Lifeline says, choose some scriptures that you're going to remind yourself of when it gets hard. And they were talking about after the child comes home. And we use them. I mean, those stuck with me, because when you do that, when they're saying, okay, choose these. So the verse of, do not be weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap if you do not give up.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, now that didn't mean that we would do this hard work and God would let it happen.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever assumed. We tried never to be presumptuous on what God would do.
Yeah.
But we knew that he was going to do something purposefully.
Yes.
It didn't know if it was going to be like Job,
Right.
But he slay me.
Yes, that's right.
But at the same time, it was, I cannot, again, explain the feeling of being carried like we were. And especially me, because most of my work was prayer and prep for things that weren't the paperwork. And, and Jeff says, meet me at the airport. And I'm like, my job is to get the kids, to pray for the courier, and to get to the airport. And so anyway.
She downplays her role because she was also the one on the phone with the State Department, with our senator's office, going back and forth and all of that, because I had no bandwidth to even try to get to that detail. But Bethany, another, I think, big picture encouragement that it was it's encouraging to both of us and part of our family vision, if you will, and that is remembering that everything is about eternity. The dot and the line analogy many of us are familiar with. The dot is our lives and everything that happens in our time here on this earth. The line that goes out for infinity is our time with the Lord. And for me, it's easy to focus on the dot. Another child, and she has greater special needs, and wait a minute, aren't we traveling to see our children? We have these launched children, and how are we going to navigate through and manage all of this? But yet when we step, and not that those aren't valid, that every family's got to navigate through all kinds of decisions, and so they were not invalid things, but as we look at things from an eternal perspective, that filter for sure changes things, and that's a view we both share, that at the end of the day, when we are sitting in our proverbial rocking chairs in heaven, are we going to wish we had invested less or done less? I think for all of us, the regrets on this earth, or to the degree we even have reflections in heaven backwards, are going to be we had more opportunity to do more.
Right.
And more beyond even what we do every day, and that's true for each of us.
Because we aren't ambitious people necessarily when we do those personality tests. Yes. On ambition, Jeff and I are both very low. So God has to, he works through us, and that's what it needs to be all about. Anyway, that eternity, that we're serving the Lord Jesus, because this is temporal. And I think about that verse about the weight of glory cannot compare. These trials cannot compare to the weight of glory. And these trials that we experience here are horrific, and there's real suffering in this world. Yes. So how great must that glory be? And when we think about, and we've thought about this with adoption, and we wanted to parent these children, and now it feels like a privilege. Now, I mean, they're just like such a gift. And when we see them glorified, and when we are sinless, and when we see, like May has cerebral palsy and she's non-speaking, and when we are with her in eternity and we can talk forever and ever, so keeping those things in mind as we serve the Lord, because his purposes are so glorious and so beautiful that it's worth the fight here. And yet he carries us. It's not, I mean, we fight, but he's doing the work. He's preparing the way. Yes. He's redeeming. He's forgiving. He's doing all sorts of beautiful things. Yeah. Which started our whole process anyway.
Right. That is an incredible perspective of what that looks like in eternity.
It's incredible. Think about that, you know, and you're like, okay, that's coming.
Yes, and to keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
So, all right, you get to China, and then it was time to meet May. So what was it like?
So back to it was neat. God was carrying us. There was no fear. There was eager anticipation, anxiousness. You're always excited. But relating back to that question, or responding to that question earlier, normally there's a lot of trepidation, I think, or can be, but we were just ready to meet her.
Well, I mean, it's always odd meeting your child, because all you've seen are pictures, and you probably can be, okay, so that, but then you realize they don't speak English and you don't speak Chinese, and then there are government officials there, and it is awkward. I think.
It'd be like if you take the post office in DMV, all great people there, but obviously challenging organizations. Imagine you're going to go have a child exchange in the middle of one of those offices with lots of important people around. That's exactly what it feels like.
That's our child, but who was in charge? You know, it's just very, and you're meeting them, and you think, what are they going to think? And even that's when I get nervous. Isn't that interesting? That And I did it every time except with David because he came to us.
Mm-hmm.
But with Lucy, I remember meeting her and thinking, this is it. This is it. And that first meeting, and you just want to stare because you're like, this is that person. And so we go into a room, and she comes up and hugs us. And now we know she's a hugger. She is such a hugger and a people person. And that was so sweet. And so we're trying to talk with the people, and we brought toys and things because there's work to do right then and there.
Okay.
So it's not just we get her and go, and
Yeah.
And so we've brought toys, and we've got Lucy in heaven, which was great.
Yes.
And they so they're over doing that, and they're talking to us about what we're going to be doing and what we need to do, and then we have to be separated and both go and spend time with her. And she was very curious. She made it pretty easy, just as far as her warmth and curiosity, even though I had to be scared. I mean, I don't know what she knows. We still don't know what she knows. But we didn't know what they had been telling her, or
Sure.
What she understood at all.
Right.
At all.
But we bonded. I would say we bonded right away. Evan and Lucy were amazing, and it went well. It's a 2-week process. We spent a week in her province because you have to finish up some paperwork there. Then you go to the city of Guangzhou, where the American consulate is, because you have to take care of some things there. So we were there, and after being there 2 weeks, we got on an airplane and flew home and made it back.
Well, how is she doing now?
She's great. She loves it. So we moved.
Right.
Yes. So in the month of May, when we first picked up May, we were asking about bath or shower. And I said, "Do you have any questions?" I'm like, and apparently she was only eating soft foods, and she had some. To say major dental problems is an understatement. Since she was home, she had 4 extractions and 4 root canals. But she has a beautiful smile now.
She does.
She loves food. She loves the popcorn. She likes, everything. And she's eating everything. And the other thing they said was we only give showers, not baths, which makes sense. When there's a lot of kids, you can't.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Well, in China, we put her in the bathtub. She loved it. Because she has cerebral palsy, her right side is affected, and her body just must feel so good in the water. So we went on a family vacation in May. She's a very much a people person. She knows all of her siblings. She never confuses their names. We all have hand signals.
Okay.
Each of them have a hand signal. She loves them all so dearly. It's just a beautiful thing. Being an 8th child could be a nightmare for some. She just loves it. She loves it. So we went on a family vacation, and she was in a swimming pool for the first time. And at first she couldn't even we put a life jacket on her,
Sure.
of course, but she couldn't really even hold herself up. And trying to no therapies, or she had not received, well, obviously no dental care, not much of anything, no therapies at all. And so her body was pretty weak. But
And she's how old?
12.
she's 12.
12,
She was
okay.
11 when we got her and turned 12 in April.
Okay.
And by the end of the week at the beach, she was doing things with her body that we had not seen before. It was just on her. So we get home, and I looked online to see if pools added value to a home, and there was a home for sale that is so perfect for our family. It was reasonably priced and had a pool. I showed it to Jeff on Thursday. He goes, "Well, that's weird. We need to go see that." We went to see it on Friday, made an offer Saturday. They accepted our offer Sunday, and that's where we live now. And May swims every day now.
So after 20 years of being in our home, which we're going to be in for the rest of our lives, we
Sure.
we moved. But there was a lot of God's provision in that for sure. So we're thankful for that. But I would say the most exciting thing is for her, the joy of seeing her with her family. She has, by God's design, a mom and a dad, and she has 7 siblings and 2 brothers-in-law. And, if obviously the Lord chose for this to work itself out, and as Dianne said earlier, with China shutting down adoption, it's very difficult because there are many families who aren't able to travel. And we all deal with life circumstances and things like that. So God's sovereign, and we can't understand all of that. But in this case, his design was for her to move from being an orphan and likely never having a family and being very close to that to now forever being part of this family, having a mom and a dad and 7 siblings, and just the joy that radiates from her is amazing. And like Dianne said, I think one of the things we look most forward to is one day in eternity when she's able to express all of her thoughts. And we're working for her to be able to do that here.
Yeah.
But her body will never be perfect here. But one day it will be, and we're thankful that we will get to sit with her for hours and days and months and just talk and maybe learn things we never knew. Who knows what the Lord has here, but we'll look forward to that.
Well, even now he's showing himself to her in so many ways, and ways she can't even, like, she doesn't know any of this story.
Right.
And don't you think about, like, our own salvation, about the extent to which, far more than inconveniences and, death on a cross, to bring us home to himself.
Yeah.
And we didn't do any of it. He did all of it. And so, May being home is such, and all of our children, that what God does, and the story, that grand story in this small story.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know all the background, all that happened, but she is learning about God. So I think that's the other thing that is absolutely wonderful, is that she's, by teaching her signs, like we've told her about God, and she asks, she doesn't use words, but she'll point to something and be like, God. And I was sick last week, and so she was like, sick, she did this, like, are you sick? And I said, no, I'm not sick. She goes, and I said, yes, God made me better. And as seeing that, the spiritual life,
those connections,
she's just thriving in every way.
Well, I know you know this, but this is an incredibly impactful story. I mean, it's impacted me to be on your journey, even just on the sideline to watch. It's impacted so many for the kingdom. You will never know this side of heaven, how many people this has impacted. And so just as we close, as you've walked through this, I mean, from starting with Evan and Lucy and then bringing May home more recently, do you feel like there's a common theme or an encouragement that you would give just as we close out?
I would. Absolutely. Because we can't believe it's our story.
Yeah.
We cannot believe that God took 2 people who came to him later, later in life, really, and was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. And it just feels like such a privilege. And taking next faithful steps as he leads, trusting him to lead, that I hope people think, wow, if God can do that in their lives, look around, see what God is doing in your life or calling you to. And don't forget to keep your head up and ask him, when I am with you in eternity, Lord Jesus, and you say, you are a good and faithful servant. Like, what does that look like in your life? And ask God for it, trusting him for the grace for the hard times, because they're there, they're going to happen. But don't not do something because of fear.
And Bethany, the organization we work for, is a significant part of this story, because that shaped our view of money and resources and what ultimately matters and thinking about eternity. So that shaped us in our life and our marriage and our growth, which is a part of this. And what's been humbling and exciting at the same time is, as you know, we get to cheerlead our clients in these types of scenarios when they're taking these steps of faith, not knowing where the Lord's going to lead necessarily, but when they're making sacrificial gifts, when they're choosing to go into the adoption realm or do other things like that. That's the privilege we have of advisors, is encouraging them in their stewardship. Well, we got the privilege of being cheered on by the organization through that process, obviously our team and the whole of the organization. So I just have to make mention of that, because if it weren't for obviously what we get to do and where we get to work, that not sure what this would all look like. And I think for us, I think it's our call as believers is, are we taking that next faithful step, trusting in him and his goodness, We don't know what that means. The mind of a man plans his way, but the Lord does direct our steps, and we can give them over to Him. So
And having that perspective, the perspective.
yeah.
is
So our hope is May's stories an encouragement to anyone to that degree. That's the encouragement we would want to leave anyone with. That she's a picture of His faithfulness, and it looks different for everybody. But what's that next faithful step look like?
Thanks. Thanks so much for sharing today. It was very special.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast, brought to you by Blue Trust. Thanks so much for listening, and please subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you are seeking financial advice, please contact us at 800-987-2987. That's 800-987-2987. Or email us at info@bluetrust.com. That's info@bluetrust.com. Trust and investment management accounts and services offered by Blue Trust are not insured by the FDIC or any other federal government agency, are not deposits or other obligations of, nor guaranteed by any bank or bank affiliate, and are subject to investment risk, including possible loss of the principal amount invested. The information in these podcasts is provided for general educational purposes only. It is not intended as specific individual advice. The client's experience may not be representative of the experience of other clients, and they are also not indicative of future performance or success. Opinions expressed may not be those of Blue Trust.